Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the soundcore by Anker Sleep A20s. These are Bluetooth buds which are designed for sleep. They can track the hours you've rested, kind of acting as an alternative to a smartwatch, but might be a little bit more comfortable compared to something that you can kind of feel if you're tossing and turning a lot. This is going to be more non-intrusive. Now, Soundcore and Anker actually came out with the first generation Sleep A10s about this time last year, and the A20 improves on 2 or 3 areas. The first one is battery life. The previous gen model lasted around 10 hours of continuous usage. With the battery case, it gave you around 40 hours when on the road, versus the A20s now can last around 14 hours of usage continuously, and then around 80 hours with the battery case. So it's going to be a pretty significant bump. The second one is going to be comfort. The A20s claim to have a more flat profile. So this is the previous generation A10s versus the newer A20s, so they actually stuck out a little bit more, meaning if you are a side sleeper, it felt a little bit more obvious compared to the newer one, which is a bit more flat if you're lying sideways on your face and still sleeping. Otherwise though, the third one, which is more about a stylistic upgrade, is a bit more subjective because I personally found the previous model also to look attractive enough, and functionality-wise they're all going to be quite similar, which means aside from sleep tracking, you have different nature sounds that you can play back from their companion app, and compared to their largest competitor, which is arguably the Bose Sleepbuds, these ones actually do not have the ability to play back music in the Bluetooth mode. They're only meant for nature sounds and sleeping, compared to Anker's solution allows you to still use them as regular wireless buds for music listening when you're not sleeping. So what it boils down to is if you're a current owner of the A10s and you're content with the comfort that it provides as well as the current level of battery performance, well, you might be still good to cling onto those for at least another generation, I would say. But if you're in the market for a new pair of buds that can not only be used for music, but also relaxation and sleep tracking, then this is going to be perhaps just a slightly more upgraded model when it comes to, again, just longer endurance as well as slightly better ergonomics and comfort. 3 times stronger passive noise isolation compared to the first generation model, and again, better sound masking as a result. Now, just like before, they don't have active noise cancellation, so do keep that in mind. It's all using the noise isolation using the seal. Are able to use them even disconnected from the phone for about a week or 2, and it can store all of that information locally on the buds themselves. So similar to a smartwatch, there is a bit of built-in memory. You don't have to sync the data every single night. It can hold on to about a week or 2's data before it then fills up that storage. So just remember to sync it periodically. You do have the ability to have custom alarms that don't really wake up anyone else but you. So it might be a good option if you're trying to wake up at different times compared to a partner that might be on the same bed. At the moment, it only comes in this one beige color though, just like on the A10s. And otherwise, on the inside here, we have just the A20, so we'll see in a moment. Down below here, we have 3 sets of different customizable wings and tips for you to get a more comfortable fit, since I would argue it's more important here than ever just because you are going to be sleeping longer hours wearing them continuously than many other pairs of buds. So you have those options, and again, wings to get an even more snug fit if you are tossing and turning a lot, and also just a Type-C standard cable. And when popping them in, it does tell you to give it a bit of a twist to really lock itself into place, and they were quite snug in my testing. Even after, again, tossing and turning, I didn't really fall out too often. When I woke up the next morning, pretty much 9 out of 10 times they were still snugly inside. The door here pops open in a pretty satisfying way, and you are then presented with the buds, which are then popped in sideways this time around, and they're held into place magnetically, pretty easy to pop in and out, with some status LED lights that tells you the battery percentage remaining inside here as well. So the mechanism feels pretty precise and similar in terms of build as the A10, I would say. Now, a closer look at the buds themselves. The mesh here for the drivers, by the way, are still made out of metal, so it's easier to clean compared to just a fabric mesh, and there's kind of a dual layer design going on to provide you with even more snugness. When completely detached, you can just tell how tiny this thing is. In fact, here is a more conventional pair of AirPod style headphones here next to it side by side. You can tell that this thing is significantly slimmer when it comes to the profile. So it might be one of the most lightweight pair of wireless buds that I've ever tested. Incredible for something so small. They were still able to pack in even more impressive battery life. So fairly impressive hardware and build quality, I would say. Now, when you first take them out of the case, even if it isn't connected to your phone via Bluetooth, by default they will start off in the nature sound slash sleeping mode. So they will immediately start playing back some of the soothing noises, including wind and water, to calm you down and start to sleep. You can pop them in, and the sleep tracking, which is done automatically, will begin. So if you want to listen to music, you have to then connect it to your phone and then change them over to the music mode. But if you're using them only for sleep tracking, they can be used completely detached just by popping out of the case, and they are pretty much ready to go in that particular profile. You don't have to click any buttons at all. But speaking of taking a closer look at the Soundcore companion app, once you are connected in the Bluetooth of your device, you're able to check out the battery percentage remaining on the left and the right side, and you can tap in here to set up your personalized alarm that will ring, as well as the sleeping status for the past night if that data is available. You can also go back and forth between the aforementioned default sleep mode, which is triggered whenever you take it out of the case, or you can go into the music playback Bluetooth mode. It's also able to have some more intelligent modes that can detect if you've fallen asleep. For example, playing back music until you fall asleep is one such mode that you can trigger here, as well as a smart volume capability as well that uses the microphones to detect your ambient environment, adjusting for the loudness automatically, which can be neat if you have your phone further away from your bed, for example. And the touch controls up top can also be customized what a double as well as triple tap will correspond to. By default, 3 presses on the left and the right will increase as well as decrease the volume, but you can also change it for other things, including skip tracks as well as play pause if desired. So fairly good in terms of customization. Find My Device can also be available on the app, so if you lose it, it will know its last location via Bluetooth. It's not really the same thing as GPS. That being said, it still gives it a good enough approximation, and you can also play back a chime if you're within the Bluetooth range to try and locate it, if it's fallen underneath a bed or a pillow. Under more advanced sounds, down below here is where you can go into the full library of different tracks. Rain is on here by default, but you can save up to 4 and push it over into the Buds built-in memory. So again, it doesn't have to be connected to your phone, and it will still be able to play back those nature sounds in the future. So instead, if you prefer something else, you can tap on Edit, delete the current ones on board, and we're looking at a pretty exhaustive list of different nature sounds, which are categorized by things like masking, water, nature, life, and meditation. For things like yoga, for instance, you can find white noise, beach sounds, snore masking, rain, river, rain on tent, underwater, seashore, microfiber, airplane, for engine sounds, fan noises, as well as piano, so on and so forth. So it really does give you a lot of granularity, and then you can push it over to the built-in memory of the buds. Also gives you the ability to tune all of these sounds even more by adding a little bit more of a brighter versus softer sound. If you want it to be a little bit more muted, you can play around with some of those built-in EQs. Now, taking a quick look at some of the sleep data, which is again tracked automatically as long as you're wearing the buds and sleeping for longer than 30 minutes. That means supposedly if you're taking naps with the buds, it will record that as sleep for you as well. Different sessions, again, similar to a smartwatch. And you can set different sleep goals in their companion app as well to see if you've reached that goal or not. And take a look at more granular data here, such as hours you were asleep, light versus deep sleep, as well as how many times you were rolling or tossing around, providing you with some quick recommendations as well if you tap to learn more and see how some of those trends can fluctuate over time as well. For the most part, I would say sleep tracking, especially when it comes to the cycles of sleep, has been pretty accurate compared to a smartwatch from Amazfit that I was comparing it against. That being said, when it comes to the total hours slept, sometimes it would miss a couple of minutes before I actually fell asleep. It seems to be a little bit more on the conservative side. For example, the smartwatch might say I slept for 6 hours. On here it might be a little closer to something like 5 hours and 40 minutes, something like that. But still a good enough range to give you a rough idea of how you're doing. And once it is counting sleep, the overall trends start to converge and look quite similar. Perhaps the only slight con I would say is for folks that are extremely sensitive, even though this is already claimed to be one of the slimmest and lightest buds that are available. Especially for things like music listening, it's already almost invisible once you're popping them in. But for sleep, if you are lying on the side of your pillow, even though again it is an improvement compared to the A10, I would say it still is a little bit noticeable that you have something in your ears at the end of the day. It's similar to having a ear plug inserted. That being said, not quite as soft as one of those foam or memory foam tips, for example, because at the end of the day, it's still made out of a rigid plastic, even though it is coated with a layer of soft touch rubber. That being said, it still is, again, good enough for just falling asleep, especially after wearing it for longer than, I would say, around 2 to 3 days. I kind of got used to it. Overall, when it comes to the music quality, that's really the part where I would argue it hasn't changed too much compared to the A10s. That is to say, again, in the companion app, you don't have additional EQs that are curated for music specifically that we usually see from Soundcore. There is no personalized hearing test, for example, nor is there a extra gaming or low latency mode either. That being said, for casual YouTube consumption and for listening to podcasts and music in general, it still felt good. It's not quite as audiophile or hi-fi grade as some of the more sound-conscious buds from this company that we've seen in the past. They again have stacked multiple drivers and supporting higher resolution audio codecs, but this will still provide you with a good enough volume output, surprisingly for something so small, and overall good clarity as well. It doesn't sound overly bass-heavy, but still pleasant. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the Anker Soundcore Sleep A20s. They are just a little bit more comfortable. I would say maybe around 10 to 15% slightly better ergonomics in that department. The increase in battery life is going to be a little bit more noticeable if you are sleeping for longer hours or going for longer distances between charge cycles. And the app still provides you with some pretty smart features, including the automatic detection of noise levels for masking snores, as well as tracking all the data and then syncing it over, plus being able to use them in the sleep mode just by popping them open without even needing to pair it with your phone by, again, saving your favorite sounds over to the Bud's built-in memory are all pretty nice built-in functions. Albeit, the sound quality is definitely secondary to the ergonomics and making them as small as possible. Definitely an interesting, again, alternative to the Bose's Sleepbuds, especially since Bose no longer really actively supports those. This remains one of the kind of last remaining options if you want something, again, exclusively dedicated for sleep, as well as for just a alternative form to a smartwatch for tracking some of those stats when on the go. You can learn more details if interested in the links down below. Overall, pretty nice incremental upgrade, I would say, compared to last generation.